Okay, hey everybody, welcome to this evening's stream. This evening we're going to be doing a kind of a package workshop, so something me and Adam used to do quite a long time ago. We haven't done one for a little while now, but the idea is we're just kind of going to focus on making some packages. So if anyone who's tuned into the streams we've been doing on a kind of Monday and a Thursday in the morning, it's the same sort of thing. We're just kind of working through requests or things that we think would be useful for players to have as packages, because obviously a lot of players in Crayta kind of rely on the packages, and they actually do some really amazing things just out of packages. So it's always good for us to kind of put out what we can working with that. I'm here with Ed. Ed's going to be doing some art building in the background. So do you want to say hello? Cool. So I think Ed's going to basically focus on a bit of a kind of a diner type thing in the background. So we've got kind of obviously our Alien Conspiracy season, and there's a lot of diner pieces to that. So we figured what might be quite nice is to have a collection of templates that you can kind of build a diner with. And Ed's going to take us through some things he's going to do with, like, perhaps kind of best practices for having different layouts on the table, well, by setting kind of, I'm assuming, a locator parent and things like that. Cool. So what we'll do, so we'll leave Ed to crack on, and we'll probably just jump in and see how Ed's getting on at various points. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to carry on with something I started on, I think it was Thursday, which was the kind of inventory stash package. So the idea is there's obviously you've got your inventory, you've got your sort of 10 slots or however many slots at the bottom. But obviously once you've kind of filled that, or once you've kind of the game might evolve enough that you kind of want somewhere for a player to store something that isn't in their inventory, so they're not actually holding this, they've kind of got a chest or a place to store it. There's quite a few games that do this already, do a really good implementation of it. So things like Ruins of Bahora, some of the Game Jam games did it as well. So there's more than one way to do this. There's perhaps already packages out there, but this is kind of hopefully going to be a fairly simple, straightforward one that should plug in quite nicely without too much effort. So we're going to work on that. After that, I think the next package I'll do is a fairly simple, straightforward package. The idea is there's quite a few games we've got which are sort of like a tycoon game, or you kind of got a collection of people in a game, but you don't always know who's in the game with you. So the next package I'll probably look at is just a simple, perhaps something that you can toggle off and on as a player, but you can actually see who else is in the game with you. Fairly straightforward little one there. And then we did get a request on the forum from Chunky Lover Mark, which was for a kind of a trigger which will kind of affect the player's movement speed, and you can kind of toggle various things. So for example, stop them from jumping, stop them from sprinting, all that sort of stuff. So we'll do a bit of a trigger which will work to do all that sort of thing, and perhaps an example with some sort of like sticky mud, or maybe even we could have it so in an area the player gets sped up. We can try and simulate a little bit of ice or something. Obviously there's a lot more you can go into with coefficient of friction and stuff, but we'll keep it simple for now. If you have any suggestions, have any requests, or anything you'd like to see us make in this sort of stream, if we've got time tonight, we can take a look. Otherwise we'll add it to the list. Next time we do this sort of thing, we can address that. So let us know in chat, or let us know over on the forum. There's a link in chat just there, or if you're on Twitch and you do !package-request, that's in the title of the video, you'll get a link there to the forum, which is our package requests area. It's a really good place to kind of throw out if you want someone to make a package. It won't just be us looking at that. Obviously anyone who's watching the forum can see that and perhaps get on and build that package for us. So what do we currently have? We have a system which allows us to kind of collect things in an inventory. We can store things in the chest, and we can withdraw them from the chest. So it's a pretty interesting UI. I'd say it's pretty debug at the moment, but it's there and it kind of works. So let's just have a little look at what I've got, and we'll see what sort of things we might want to add to this before we say it's finished. Okay. I'd like to know how to lock someone out of something. Russ in mind, wink. Okay, so a package for a specific lock member of staff out of area door. Maybe, we'll see. Fairly straightforward. I guess that could be pretty good. Pretty good package, a kind of username detecting package. Right, so what have we got? We've got our player template. No, we haven't. It's on our user template. So again, kind of makes sense in a way when you think about the chest. You would think that the chest would have all of the logic for the saving, for the loading, but the chest entity in the world is obviously something that won't persist. It's an entity that is spawned and despawned and destroyed, whereas the user template, although it is kind of similar, it's a thing that is kind of destroyed when the game leaves. The user has the capacity to save information, and that's why we have this user stash on here, which is actually where we kind of store all the information and save and load it to do with the package that we're working on. So it's not just something that is a that we're not going to have it saved in the world, because obviously once the game once that world and that server is gone, that chest is gone, and there's no way to then get the information back from that chest. So all logic to do with saving and loading would always come from the user itself. So we can set a size. So I'm going to set this back to 10. I think I set it down to 2 for testing. And let's have a look at. So let's have a quick look at what we've got so far. I'll just go into a separate preview to not disturb Ed too much. maybe a bit later, but yeah, I'll let you get a bit more progress first, I think. Okay, so what we've got here. So Iceland says a trigger that works on UTC time for tycoons, etc. Could be something as this building only opens between 20 and 8 to improve on some Easter eggs. Oh, I see. So like a time-based trigger. I guess would it be a trigger, or like, so basically the logic where you can specify kind of a time range and then some action based on that time range. I think the adventure script kind of does something similar to that, and that's where we are at the minute. This is an adventure template. It felt like a good place to start this sort of work from. And I think this might do something similar. So we can have a little look at that, and actually while we're in here, we could maybe mimic some of that to make our own package. So yeah, that sounds like a good one for the list. Right, so I've got one slot. I've got iron ore, as you can see in the bottom in my inventory. So that's the inventory that my player is holding, and this is the inventory that is kind of the stock one that a lot of the games come with. And we can see here that my stash over on this side has a shop resource in it, so I can deposit this. Okay, now I've got an empty slot. Close. Okay, and that's my iron in that chest. I can then return to my chest to see. So that kind of works nicely. So I think what I was looking to do next was probably, before I get to tidying up the UI and stuff, would be to have a look at like a kind of a split option, maybe split them in half, or deposit one at a time, 2 at a time, something like that. So I think we'll go for all or one. That feels like the obvious choice to start with. So let's have a look at doing that. Okay. So first things first, let's probably get our buttons in place. So we'd need extra buttons in the UI itself. I'm just going to stick a few more things in the stash kind of dummy data here. There we go. Okay, so I've got some things to work with. So probably want, just a button next to each of these for now. The one thing we're doing in here is quite a nice way to make UI that little bit more sort of powerful, especially when from an interaction point of view. So a lot of UI in games is obviously it's kind of visual only. So a health bar, the inventory itself in this case, the like a compass, all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of the time it's just a visual representation of something. Whereas actually, once you start adding buttons, things that can actually a player can interact with, you can really then open the UI up to do a lot of pretty powerful things within gameplay. And the way this works here is we actually have a game face data bind. So a lot of the things you'll see, data bind value is a good way to get information on the screen. Data bind for is a way you loop through stuff. Data bind click, you can actually kind of bind information into a click event, and that's a way that you can kind of make buttons contextual to whatever it is you need it to be. So in this case, it's going to pass the whole inventory record through that click to our JavaScript function, and that's just one way that you can kind of get a lot of cool information, a lot of cool functionality just out of essentially just HTML buttons in the UI. So what do we need? We need to probably just stick the second one in here. Okay, so we can see we've got our second button that's just appeared next to that. It would have a slightly different name, so we'd need another message down here. So this will be deposit all message and deposit single message. Okay, deposit all, deposit one. That'll do for now. So what would we do different? So once you click that button, we kind of need to tell the lure in this case, okay, well, how many do they want? Do they want to do all of them or just one of them? So down in our functions here, so we're already passing, so we're automatically passing the count, which is the amount of it. So the deposit all button is already doing that for us. What I can do here, instead of having an extra function, so once I click deposit, I can pass an amount here as well. Amount, click withdraw, we'll do the same already here. So amount and amount. Okay, so instead of assuming we're going to do all of them, in this case, we're actually going to pass in from the click button itself how many of the thing they want. On the single button, okay, so this will be straightforward, we'll just pass a 1 through there. So we're going to say, okay, well, this is going to be 1. Here, we actually want to pass in the count. So we're telling, okay, it's everything that it has. So the inventory record. Okay, inventory record is our kind of table from our data down here. So we can see that each of these is an inventory record. So it's just simply a dot count. We'll give us that. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense. As I say, we'll just added an extra parameter there, and we're going to say, right, do you want to pass, basically we're going to say to the Lua script, get rid of all of them, or to just get rid of one of them. So a lot of the functionality should already be there on the other side. Just a case of setting up this extra button. So let's do the same for the withdraw. Okay, so this will be stash record. Count, and then for this one, so when we click withdraw 1, we only want to withdraw 1 there. Okay, withdraw single. Withdraw all. Cool. And let's just check we've got our function names down here. So see these buttons have now gone to undefined, and that's because that doesn't exist anymore as an option. So second one in here, so withdraw all. Single. Okay, we can tidy up the UI a little bit, depending on how much I've got to do to get this to kind of all work enough. I think maybe I'll leave the UI, but I'm not sure how much more I want to add to this. I mean, if anyone in chat has any ideas of what they'd like to see a stash do, if it doesn't look like it's doing it already, then do let me know, and we can kind of evolve this a little bit for the first part of the stream. I think that should all just work. Let's just double check the code side. So when I click the click deposit buttons, essentially it's calling a Crayta.call Lua. So it's going to reach through to the Lua and say, okay, well, let's call this function with these. So it's going to give me the name of the item and then how much of the thing to do. And it's the same for withdrawing. So it's the same logic both ways. It just depends which direction it's going to go in. So if I go to a user stash script, let's have a look, see what we've got down here. So in our on local click deposit item, okay, the first thing we do is actually send a message to the server to say, you need to handle this, because all of the logic is on the server side. So the UI based stuff's locally, that's a client based thing, but the actual storage of that information for each user is based on the server. So we're going to say to the server, okay, we're going to deposit this item and this is the amount. So this should all work just fine. Let's have a look. You finished your diner yet, Ed? 15-minute diner. Yeah, that's true. Took you a little while. Okay. Cool. So withdraw 1. Okay, that seems to have just worked, which is nice. Deposit 1 goes back. Okay, so these won't work, and that's because there's no space left in my inventory. So okay, I think that's one of the next things I need to do is actually have somewhere on the screen where it gives you a message as to why something hasn't happened, because obviously it looks like I can withdraw and I can keep clicking this. But if I look at my printouts, I've actually got it printing out to say that the inventory is full. I deposit all, draw all, 1, 2. Okay, cool. That logic seems to have worked pretty nicely. Go back. Yeah, so I'll probably just get a message going. So we've got something that appears like a debug error, or when something hasn't quite worked, we'd need to know what hasn't worked, and then yeah, then probably from there, I think that might be enough to just clean up the UI a little bit, and then maybe move on to one of the next things. Katie says, "Are there any plans to let us make our own animations in the future?" So what do you mean by your own animations? Exactly, are you thinking like player character animations, or kind of things animating? I imagine that's probably something maybe one day. I'm not sure that's anything we'd get to in the too recent future. Obviously that's quite a big task. I mean, you can always let us know what sort of animations you might think would be missing, and perhaps that's something we could look to add. ZKD Gaming says, "Oh hey, how you doing?" Cool. So let's get the debug message in. Okay. So I probably need to make a bit of space for this because this is already pretty big full screen UI. So I'm thinking maybe like a section down at the bottom. So if I just squish these up a touch, I think this is going to be easier to actually just do this full screen and swap tabs. So let's go to the Stash UI. Looking at the player character, yeah. So I'm not sure there's any plans to do any sort of custom player character animation, but it's certainly something to that we'd like to add more of ourselves at some point. So if you do let us know on Discord, it's discord.gg/Crayta. So you do let us know there, or on Twitter, or forums, or wherever. There's an art requests section of the forum. That's probably a pretty good place to do this actually. Yeah, so do let us know what sort of animations you might want to add, and then we can always have a look at doing that kind of in the future. But yeah, maybe one day you could do your own. I mean, what sort of things do you think would be missing? Wouldn't everyone just love a Superman flying animation? So like the classic sort of one arm raised, cape flapping behind sort of thing. That'd be kind of cool. Okay. So the height is what I want to have a look at here. So if we just reduce this one to 40. Okay, and then get it sit. Yeah, don't want it to be centered. Wait, is that right? Surely that should move. Oh no, they're spilling out of the container. Okay. no napkins.
It's a very unhygienic diner.
Yeah, I wonder. I guess like a voxel a voxel napkin. It's like just a big. Here's a big cube to wipe your face with.
Mm.
Alex White says, "Is there a package to make objects follow you?" I'm not sure there's a package for that. I know people have done that, but that is an interesting thing actually. That this week's tutorial, as it stands, um, hopefully, if we can kind of get things together and things out in time, is going to be like it's a similar concept. I think Andy's doing like a pets following you thing.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I've not seen what that is, but I think there will be. Yeah, if you keep an eye out for the tutorial later in the week, Alex, that's probably the sort of thing you'd be looking for. And I think the way it's going to be done is there will be a package off the back of it the players can also use. So if there's not one now, there will be one soon. Okay, right, that's freed up some space underneath here for my message. So let's have a look at how the structure works. So it's container with the side and then the button at the bottom. Okay, so let's set up a new div here. This will be error message. I think it's probably the best word for it. Okay, so let's just establish where that's going to actually sit. Let's give that a border. That's set up at the top at the minute, so what do you want to do? You want to give it a bit of height. I think it should be 5 rem, 3 for that. Position absolute, get it to the bottom. And it should be able to sit at the left. Okay, that's sitting down here, so it needs a width. Okay, so let's raise that up from the bottom a little bit. Perfect. Okay, so that's where our message will sit. So if we just write something it's centered in here, that's going to be pretty much where we want it. So text line center. And then just to test, this is an error message. Okay, so let's make that a bit bigger. Font size 2 rem. I think that'll do for now. So yeah, an error, a message that can appear down there. Let's have a look. This is error message. This needs to come from a data bind. As we said before, just a classic kind of game face data bind here. We could maybe do something a bit smarter here, to do with like the JavaScript function that could call it and then hide it after a little bit of time. I'm going to leave that for now, again, just to try and strip any of the complexity out of this. But that would be one way to do it, is to not necessarily call it directly like the way I'm going to do it, but be to call a JavaScript class or JavaScript function that would handle it for us. But let's add our error message to the model. This is a test. Oh, okay, that's worked. Right. So now we need to get the code in place to actually call that. I think we already had the logic that would catch these cases. See if I can find that. Okay, stash full. Okay, even left myself a handy to do message. Get the warning message on screen. So we would need to, where am I? I think I'm on the server here. Yeah, okay. So we'd need a new local side function. to show error message. We need the message, and I could do the timeout side on the lower actually. So let's say show time is the amount of time it's going to show for, and we could do this in a schedule to kind of clear the message essentially. So because you could click the button several times, obviously we're going to need to check there isn't already a schedule running, and if there is, we essentially just want to cancel it so we can start a new one. So on the script, we're just going to call self cancel error schedule. Okay, so cancel that. And then the first thing we want to do is get our widget or our stash UI. Update the error message by whatever our message is. Wait for showtime. So let's say that's going to be sort of 3 seconds, and then we're going to call the same thing again, but actually this time just with an empty string to clear it. Okay, so we're going to update our message. We're going to wait for X amount of seconds, and then we're going to clear that on this side. That should work pretty nicely there. How about if okay, so I need to call that from up here, so where I actually kind of already caught these issues. Send to local, so error message. Okay, my first message is going to come from the properties. So stash full message, show time, probably be a property as well. Okay, and we're going to do the same down here for when the inventory is full. But this time it's going to basically be a different message, so inventory full message. Okay, let's set those properties up at the top. Who's that? AJ, how's it going? So error message. In fact, no, that wasn't where was it? It was stash full message. Inventory full message. And error message showtime. That's it. Be a number. Okay, and it's always good when you're making packages for people to try and make the properties as kind of useful and as kind of easy to understand and as kind of user friendly as possible. So in this case, I want to set a few things. First, I'm going to set a default of 3. I'm going to set a min of 0. So you can't actually have this any less than 0. It wouldn't make sense. So min 0, and then a really good one to always try and include is a tooltip. You can include a tooltip in all of the things that you want players to actually use, so they can hover over it and they can see what it's actually going to do. So you can see at the minute, if I hover over max size, it just says max size. That's not particularly useful. The size of the stash. Okay, so that seems fairly straightforward, but now when I hover over it, I'm going to get that as a little tooltip as well. So it's certainly worth spending a bit of time writing up some tooltips. The message to present when the stash is full when attempting to deposit. Okay, and then we've pretty much got the same message, but the reverse. Withdraw, and then the tooltip for this last one is the time to show the message for. Okay, so that should hopefully all just work fine now. That's our little function which is going to handle that, and we've got our error message which should appear fine. Let's go and have a look and see if that's worked. As I say, if there are any more package suggestions, we've got a couple, 2 or 3 I'm going to try and get through after that I've wrapped up on this package. But say if there are any that we don't get to, or if you think of anything after the stream, then do make sure you head over to the forum or package request section and get those suggestions in. I'll probably be back on Thursday with a similar sort of stream, trying to kind of get through the list essentially. Cool. So that's one thing I need to clean up. I can see that this is the test is still sat there as my debug, but if I try and deposit 1, okay, that should work fine. I withdraw all, okay, and then if I try and withdraw, my inventory is only set to a space of 1, so it shouldn't let me. Inventory full. Okay, so the message isn't appearing. Okay, let's kind of look, see what I've done wrong there. Unrelated question: can we force AJ to play Dark War 2 tomorrow? Ha ha ha. I don't know. That's going to be up to AJ, to be honest. Is there not already a Dark War 2? Is that not what we've played? Or is there a new thing? Have you played Dark War, Ed? It seems like your cup of tea.
It sounds like it could be fun. I have not played it, to be honest.
It's like
it's got the word dark at the beginning, so yeah, I'm all up for it.
It's like a super hard obby essentially.
Oh, my favourite.
Yeah, it's like random blocks floating in darkness essentially. So
that sounds like a dream. I look forward to giving it a go and failing miserably. So as Russ has been talking, I've been just working on a basic diner booth. And I don't know, Russ, if you just want to show the world and see what I've done and see if it's easy to use.
Have a look. Oh, is it not in the world? Have you templated it?
I've templated it, yeah, but if you pop into the world, go to the templates and
have a look.
Just want to see if you can use what I've done.
Diner booth. Okay, so I've got my seat, my table.
So
cool.
That gives you the table. If you then open up the diner booth,
yeah,
it's not appearing on your screen. We're not seeing what's happening. Oh, that's probably delayed, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's a delay. It will happen.
Sorry. Yes, it'll happen. My apologies. Yeah, and then if you click on the table itself, what I've set up is diner table contents A, B, and C. If you drag any of those templates onto the table,
yeah,
then the contents will appear on the table.
Ooh, cool. I've got plates and menus and milkshakes.
Yes, you don't need to place all these things on your own. You can just drag these things in, and because the origin of the templates are the same, they will just automatically appear in the correct place. And you can quickly make a variety of different booths with different contents on top of them.
Oh, that looks nice. Can I mix and match?
If you put two on the same, it'll probably go horribly wrong.
That's not too bad. B and C kind of works. There's a little bit of clicking on a book and a menu and a pie in my burger.
C was going very much on the alien conspiracy thing because it's very much Twin Peaks. Right. It's cakes and coffee. Pies and coffee.
Pies and coffee. But then I guess the nice thing is, like, let's say you did want to make a particularly busy table and you put A and C together. Maybe not A and C. B and C. Yeah. They look pretty good. And then obviously, yeah, these are things here now that I can just kind of shift around just a touch to get.
And the things on the table are all set up with no collision on them, so you can jump on the tables. It looks a bit spacious, but that's because I wanted you to be able to go around the tables. Nice. Maybe use the chairs and the table as cover in a shooter game or something like that. So to run around.
Nice. Yeah, no, that looks pretty cool. So that seems to work quite nicely. Nice. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I was thinking. You know, nice, a nice way to kind of quickly throw together some sets. So I guess you've got more toppers you could do, or more kind of booths.
I could do more toppers. I'm going to make more booths because any booth that has a table like that, you just drag the things onto the table and they should fit.
Nice, cool. Okay, that sounds great. Yeah. So you have to, at the end of the stream, we'll probably just throw all these into a package and see what people can come up with.
Yeah.
Cool. Right. What was I? Oh, I was looking into an issue. My error message is erroring. How ironic. But it wasn't erroring, it just wasn't working. So let's have a print in here and let's just see. Start debugging the process. Oh, wait, I know why it didn't work. I think it worked. Actually, I think it worked just fine, but I hadn't actually set what the messages were. So it was presenting me with an empty string. Yep, that was it. So I think it worked just fine, but I didn't actually put anything play. So your doesn't need to be all caps, don't need to shout. Your stash is all. Your stash is full, and your inventory full. Your stash is full. Okay, your stash is full. Let's have a look. It should work this time. Vitor Portella, apologise if I've said that wrong, says, I love this game. That's very good to hear. Thank you very much.
Yay.
Okay, so withdraw. Your inventory is full. Okay, so I got my message. Deposit all. Withdraw. Inventory is full. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to trigger this side unless I get a lot more stuff, but we can see that that error message was appearing at the bottom just fine. Might not be obvious enough, but again, kind of the beauty of the packages is that, you know, they're there to be manipulated, to be changed. I'm going to do the UI in a moment, but I'm going to kind of keep it. I'm going to get rid of the borders, but it's going to stay relatively simple. It's going to stay relatively straightforward. And the reasoning there is, you know, the power of the CSS and the HTML is that you can just kind of really start to like craft your own stash and how it looks. If I set this too heavily themed, then obviously it's not going to fit every game. So the more simple and basic this is, the kind of better it works for everybody is an all-round solution. Okay. So what do I need to do? I probably, just need to really focus on cleaning up that UI. So let's do that now. So I think getting rid of the borders for a start. So a lot of these colorful borders, I find it's a really nice way to visualize kind of where things are in space, because a lot of the time, you know, you're going to end up with emptiness, and trying to position things is difficult. If you can actually see the border of each kind of element, I think that makes it a lot easier to work with. So we can start to look for anything here which is like a solid border. Perhaps we can keep the border, but we need to make it much thinner. So like 5 and black, something like that. Each row. Let's get rid of the row borders. Deposit buttons. Yep, they're fine for their borders. Alright, the withdraw or the close button probably needs to be lifted a bit so it's not sat on the bottom of the screen. Okay, but must have missed one of the borders. Ah, there it is. Okay, that feels just a tiny bit neater. Buttons are kind of floating in space. I guess I could make the text of the buttons a tiny bit smaller. Okay, that's good. That's fit withdraw all onto one line now, so that all fits nicely. Maybe need to put a header on the top of either row to make it clear which side is which. Get rid of this border, the yellow one. There's a bit of transparency on the background. I think that's fine. You know, it's always good because it is a full screen UI, but you don't always want to take up, you know, it'd be nice to be able to see what's going on behind you. think that works fine. I'm going to leave it as it is. I think it's clear which side is your inventory and which is not, especially because it's got like, deposit and withdraw. It's fairly straightforward which side is which, and then there's obviously room there for you to customize UI in any which way you want. So I'm wondering if that's really enough to go with. So let's just have a good old bash of this. If I I want to change my max size here. Let's say you can have 5 things in your inventory. Dash is there. Cool, right, I might take us into a main preview then, Ed, if you're happy.
That's fine with me.
Cool, let's kind of look, because I'm curious to test this with 2 players, make sure our stashes behave themselves. So you should be able to collect some apples or resources if you look at it and interact.
Yep.
Okay, and then if you interact with the chest, I'm assuming you'll get a screen with 10 iron and a resource on the left and then nothing on the right.
Iron nugget times 10, shop resource times 1.
And then nothing on the right hand side.
Nothing on the right hand side. Yeah.
Cool. And then
deposit all or deposit 1. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you start clicking around, it kind of makes sense. Things move around as you'd expect. And if you come away and go back onto it.
Yeah, that works perfect.
Cool. And then there's a close button at the bottom. You click that.
Yep. And my inventory has updated correctly. Yeah,
cool.
That looks really good.
And then if you go back on, it should all have remembered what you've got. I can have a look at the same time. Cool. Okay, this is working pretty nicely, I think. Sweet. Okay. Well, I think that's probably. I think that's probably ready to put out. And obviously, if more people use it, and it's the sort of thing that is pretty good, as a package that a lot of people make use of, then of course it's the sort of thing that I'd like to, perhaps do more of. Expand upon it. We can get feedback. We can snowball it. But I'm always keen, especially in the first instance, to make sure that we don't overcomplicate it. We kind of build it as the functionality gets more kind of requested. Still do my usual stuff. If I sell 1 resource. Yep. Cool. Right. That'll do. Thank you, Ed.
Oh, I was just going to pick up that up. Get my challenge for the day.
Well, for the editor session. Every time we preview, you'd have to do it again. Yeah. Sometimes I find myself previewing for longer than I want to, just so I can just tick it off, even though I know it's temporary. It's nice to have the satisfaction.
It's all testing.
It's all testing, right? So I need to make sure the stash script. So I'll probably keep this chest in as an example. So let's template up this. I'll call it stash chest. Okay, and then a good thing to do when you're making packages, if you've got functionality on a template like a user or a player, and you want to kind of have it in a way that the person who's installed your package can just simply drag and drop on this script folder here. If I make this a template with some of these default options, I think that all makes sense. If I clear that one. Okay, so if I go template, create new, and we'll just call this user stash. Okay, so this is now a template that literally a player can just install the package and then drag this onto the user, and then all this stuff will appear as you've left it. So it's a really nice way so that it wouldn't have to kind of, in this case, the alternative would be to drag the script and the UI is 2 separate things. But it's kind of nice, to make sure that there's less steps for the players to actually kind of understand or things that they would need to do. Let's go ahead and make this a create new package. We'll call this a user stash description. A system for storage of items outside of the inventory. Great way to allow players to save and load items they don't want to carry. Okay, so there's a lot of different implementation or different uses for this. So RPGs, you could have like a gun game where players have a they pick the guns out of their stash that they want to take into combat with them. There's there's a lot of different things you could do with this. So we want the stash chest as an example, and that's going to come with the stash script. Good, so that's the script that lives in the world that actually handles, you interact with the stash, and then it tells the user to open up the information. And then our user stash templates. This is our script folder, and again we see we've got the stash script. That's the script on the player that handles all of the saving and loading and displaying of the UI, and then the stash UI itself, so the actual UI that we see rendered on the screen. So that still should be all we need for that. I'm pretty sure I've not missed anything, so let's go ahead and create that. Awesome. Okay, so if we go to the community tab now and search stash, we should see stash, the user stash. So we see stashes here, so there's probably already one that players have made. So definitely, go ahead and check out a couple of different implementations, see which one fits your game best. This is the one I've just created. So a system for storage of items outside of the inventory, a great way to allow players to save and load items they don't want to carry. So waiting for the lock Russ out package. So it's interesting that I would make the package that locks me out. I feel like I could write all the loopholes in that locks everybody else out. Interesting. Right. Cool. So what was next on the list? Next on the list was the other users in the world. So this is going to be a fairly straightforward package, but it's one that I think we can add a few different different kind of properties to kind of change the way it behaves. So the use case for this, so what I'm thinking is what would make it useful is, for example, in a lot of tycoon games and a lot of games which are kind of drop in, drop out. They're not round based. So things like gun games, capture flags. You've always got the scoreboard there, and you can see who's in the game with you. But a lot of games on Crayta, a lot of the popular games are ones where you kind of join the world and then you don't really see anybody else visually necessarily straight away, but it might be nice to know who else is actually in that game with you. This is just going to be a simple bit of UI on the screen which will essentially display the other users in the world, and we'll have some properties around should it be toggleable, should it be something that the player chooses to see, they slide it out as a prompt for it essentially. Should it be something that they they kind of see when someone joins and leaves, but then it disappears. Perhaps we can play with a few things like that. So let's have a look. Cool. So what do we want to do first? I think first let's have a look at the kind of the simple kind of UI side of this. So this is going to be again on my user, and we'll create a new script folder for this. Users in world. Probably think of a better name for it eventually. Users in world script, and then a widget to go alongside this. Okay, so it's going to be a fairly simple box like this, but I want to move it somewhere that's a bit less intrusive. So probably in one of the top corners. I'm thinking maybe up in the top right corner, something like that. Okay, so fairly straightforward. I'm going to keep this again, fairly kind of simple level of styling. Don't care about that. What I do care about is its position. So I'm going to say top, we'll keep it probably flush to the corner. So it's going to be 0, and right is going to be 0. So that means it's kind of 0 units from the top, 0 units right. So that's going to move up that top corner. But what we do see is it's kind of not quite sat exactly where we'd expect, and that's because of this transformation. So get rid of that. That's going to sit up there. Right, so now what we have is it's sat kind of just right. If I expand this a bit, we can see that that's now sat perfectly kind of up in that top right corner. So that's just what we wanted. Okay, let's get rid of all the HTML, so we just end up with a blank box. So in here, we're just going to write essentially a list of the names of players in the game. Those functions. Okay, so what is our data going to look like? It's simply going to be users. Oops. I cannot spell users. Right, users, and it's going to be kind of an array essentially. So there's going to be multiple things in here, and username. So 1. Okay, let's add a few of these. Okay, so we've got our 5 users essentially set up in our model at the bottom. Then what we want to do now is a div in here, which is going to repeat through that table. Put one in for each user. So for this user row, okay, and then we'll do a data bind for. So data bind for is a loop that will loop through for each thing in that table. So we'll call this user, and then what we're going to do, we're going to have a data.users. Okay, so we're still not going to see anything appear. So we're essentially going to create this div for each user, but then we need to say, okay, well, for this user, let's actually display what is contained within that table. So within that sort of that element. So we need to get the username out. So we can have a new div in here for this username. Okay, and then we're going to do a data bind value. And our value is going to be user. So that's what we're basically getting out of this for loop here. So this is our, each time we iterate through, user is getting that table dot username. Okay, so that's putting the name out, and we should see now in the top corner we've got those 5 elements up here. So a couple of class tweaks. Username. Let's adjust the font size, make that a bit bigger. Okay. Cool. What I might do, so rather than setting the height explicitly, you set a minimum height. Okay, so I'm saying that's the smallest it can be. So let's make it 20. In fact, basically, I think if the minimum is 4 players, or the minimum that you can, yeah, basically 4 players is the maximum that some players can have. I think if we make sure we accommodate 4 as standard, let's say something like that. Okay, and then essentially, because I set that minimum, it could actually outgrow this. So if I add now the more users, so we see I've added 3 more records, that's actually now grown out the back. And if I get rid of a couple, it's going to sort of shrink alongside that. But the minimum it will be is that smallest amount. And obviously, with the limit of 20 players per game, it's never going to grow more than 20 anyway. So that's just a nice way that you can keep UI kind of be flexible enough to grow, shrink, which might have been a nice way to do the stash package, but hey ho. Right. User 5. So that's essentially all set up now. So really what we need is just a script which can kind of monitor all of this stuff. So we've got our script here, so we need to actually do the implementation. So as always, because we're using UI here, we're going to be working on the local client. Let's set up a kind of local side of the script. Okay, so local on it. So when this user locally initializes, we want to get hold of the widget. Okay, users in world UI. Probably don't want to hide it by default, or we could have that as an option actually up here, couldn't we? So hide UI by default. If you want to show the UI manually. So it might be that you want the UI to always be there. It might be that you want the UI to kind of appear when you want it to. So then, you know, maybe like a toggle kind of option. It might be that, you know, there's a round based system. So when it's on a certain camera, you don't see it. So you don't always want to assume that, you know, players will always see it. So let's have a bit of logic here. Basically checks that. So if self.properties hide UI by default, so if that's true essentially, then we want to hide it here. So on initializing on the local client, we're going to get hold of the widget, and then if that's true, we're going to hide it. So we probably want a function then back at that which will show it again. So show users in world UI. Okay, always good to have a guard in here. So it is local. So obviously if someone called this function on the server, we need to make sure that we actually pass control to the local client to say, okay, you can't, you know, show UI on the server. It doesn't make sense. The server doesn't belong to a person. So actually in this case, let's say, you know, if we're not local, then we're going to fall into this if statement, and we're going to say if self get entity send to local. So we want to basically call this function again, but this time make sure we're on the local client instead. So we can always guarantee that this gets called in here, and we're going to simply say self.widget show. Okay, so that's going to show information. Okay, so also what we'll probably want to do is we could do we don't necessarily need to check on tick. We could have a table that monitors. If I have a quick look at the UI, so there's a few ways we could do this. Again, it's just the kind of the thing with programming and encoding. There's never really, or very rarely, one way to do anything. You know, there's lots of different approaches. But one approach would be we have a function called onUserLogout and onUserLogin. So it could be that we actually track, you know, anytime a user logs in and logs out, we want to go through all of the users in the game and rebuild our table and update it. We could check every frame. Obviously that would be massively expensive and actually not really necessary, because you're going to be checking, you know, 30, 60 times a second when players will only log out, you know, every few minutes. So I think this is going to be the best approach here. So we'll have a users in world script on user login. And this gets called automatically by the game when a user logs into the world. So when this happens, we can basically call a function to say update the UI. Update users in world UI. Okay, and we'll write that function in a moment. We'll do the same for users in world UI on user logout. So anytime a user logs out, and the user that gets passed to these functions is the user who's just logged in or out. So you could also at this point lean on that to say display a message when that person, you know, leaves or joins. Boop says, "Yay, hi Russ." Hi Boop, how's it going? There's been some talk of Dark 2 here apparently, and I saw that you released a game the other day, so congrats on that. I'm looking forward to AJ playing that on stream at some point. Update users in world. Oh, that's not. Users in.
Sorry, I'm being so quiet, everybody. I'm just concentrating on having fun.
That's okay. I'm probably talking so much you've not really got a chance to get a word in a word in edgeways. So okay, update users in world. So at this point, we know that this function is being called when a user's either joined the game or left the game. So what we can essentially do is just recount all the users, gather the information, and pump it through to the UI. So I'll set up a little table here. So our local UI data, and we're going to say send self get entity send to local. Yeah, I think we'll do it this way. We'll say show users in world, and we'll pass UI data to it. So this function here is actually going to take the information that we want. So we're going to say show, and then we're also going to update the widget at this point as well. Okay, so we're going to pass through our UI data, and then essentially, if we're on the server, then this gets called, and we need to make sure we call this function again locally, but with our data. And then we're going to put that into our data.users. So we need to make sure that whatever UI data is matches this format here. So we need to make sure that each thing we add to this table now is simply just a username. Okay, so to do that, we're going to say get all of our users. So local users equals get world get users. Okay, so we've now got a table of everybody in the game, and this shouldn't include the person who's just left. If it does, what we can do is pass this user through and make sure we ignore them at this point. But I'm not sure how. This might be that we're going to basically say to show the UI a little bit too soon. We could wait. That feels a little bit weird. So I think what we'd probably end up doing is just passing through. But yeah, let's just do that anyway. We're going to pass this user through as user to exclude. So we don't want to show this user because they're the one. In fact, if they're just logged in, we don't care. So if they've just logged out, that we care. Okay, so we've got our users. Let's loop through and build our table. So for user in pairs users, so essentially for each kind of key and value pair there. So essentially we've got, we don't care about the key, but we do care about the user. So if user to exclude and the user is equal to user to exclude, then in fact no, let's is that gonna work? Or okay, that's the better way to do it. So basically if our user is equal to user to exclude or user to exclude nil. So if we haven't set a user to exclude, it's always just going to go, this will always pass because that'll always be nil. But if it hasn't, then it will make sure this gets checked. I think this might work better the other way around. Okay, yeah, so if this is nil, which it will be most times, then that's fine, it will just continue. If this isn't nil, then we do have a user to exclude, so we want to check this. And if they are not, so if they're not equal to that, then we're going to add them. Okay, we got there in the end. Cool, so table.insert. We want to insert into our UI data table, and basically all we're going to insert here is the username. Okay, so we get our username from our user entity, and that's going to match what we're expecting to see here. Okay, that should all be good. We probably want to have another function here which hides. I'm not sure we're going to be calling it at all, but it's good to have it ready in the package for anyone who might want it. So hide users in world UI. I'm just going to copy and paste this. Essentially, I want the same guard around that to make sure that this only ever gets called on the local client. Hide users in world. Okay. So let's see if that's worked at all. Whoops. I just clicked the simulate all button. Apologies if you're if the whole world just went a bit weird for you then. Right, I'm going to go into a separate preview.
That happens. Fine.
I'm going to go into a separate preview. And in theory, if when I say, Ed, if you did the same, I should see
A separate
you.
one.
Yeah, in a minute, because then I should see you appear simulating you actually logging into a game. So we'll see if your name just suddenly appears.
Okay.
Oh,
You know when to press the button.
I got an undefined. That's not good. My name's not undefined. I've got a name. Okay, bear with me. I feel like I've broken something there. But it's a good thing to be aware of, actually. If you are ever testing this sort of thing, which requires players to be logging in, logging out of a server, obviously that's difficult or it's impossible to do in a normal preview because pressing that button would send everybody to the game at the same time. But if you're trying to test like a message when someone leaves the game, or what happens, you know, like it might be that your game auto balances when players leave. The best way to actually test that is by using the separate preview, so that kind of simulates players exiting and joining your game. So why does that all? Oh wait, is that because is it expecting? Okay, yeah, I think this is because it's expecting a table with username equals a string, whereas I've just literally passed the strings. So this needs to be a table here, and it needs to be username equals. Okay, so this kind of ensures that I've got the same structure as what the UI was expecting. I think that was the problem. Have a look. I had to test players coming in and going, but forgot about the second preview option, so we just kept going in the hub and coming back. Lol. Oh wow, that's yeah, that's quite an extreme way of doing it. The separate previews actually, yeah, the preferable option there for doing that sort of thing. Okay, cool. Right, I can see I've got Russ #2283 in the top corner. So Ed, when you're ready, if you could join the separate preview server.
Separate preview server, here I come.
Yeah. And I wonder if we'll see a name appear in the top. In theory, we should. Hey, the Barbarian has just appeared.
Hey.
And here he is. Cool. That seems to work quite nicely. No errors in the console. That's good. And then if you were to go back to the editor, this is the bit where it might potentially break. Oh no, cool. Okay, it's gone. It's gone down to just be me. So we could do some fancy stuff with you get animations, you get the names to slide around. Probably some fun ways to accomplish that. But I might leave that there. Cool. Right, so there's one more thing I wanted to do with this, and I'll probably just add a couple of options for like notifications. So when players leave, you might want to notify the world. I think some of the starter games do already do this themselves, but in case it doesn't, it might be nice to have that functionality here. So we'll add a property here. So show message on user joining, be a boolean. Okay, and then we're going to do another property here, which will basically be the message to show if this is ticked. So message on user joining is going to be type text, and it's going to be visible if. So again, it's a really great tool to use here if you're kind of preparing properties. You really want to make the properties as useful for people as possible. So it's going to be visible if, not a string. It's going to be a function. It's going to seem a little bit strange, but it's going to be a function, and you're going to basically return p.showMessage. Okay, so this function will run, and it will determine, okay, well, if this returns true, then we need to show this property. So in this case, if show message on user joining is true, i.e. the box is ticked, then this property will appear. So we're going to copy that, and we're going to do the same for show message on user leaving. Okay, let's just have a quick look at how that looks now over on this side. Okay, so we can see as I tick these boxes, we get kind of a few options appear. That's perfect. Message on user joining. So we can, now we've got these on user login and on user logout functions in here, we can essentially just lean on that a little bit more. So it will be if self.properties show a message on user joining. Then essentially we're going to loop through every player in the world and we're going to send them a notification that this has happened. So for each user. Okay, so this is going to give me a little kind of repetitive loop for every user, and we're simply going to say user center scripts add notification. I think that's the function name. I can go and check. So, oh, we don't have the notification script. So this is going to require the notification package, which a lot of the starter games do come with. So that, and this is a pretty simple one. All you need to do is install the package, and go to the packages you've installed, and just drag user notifications over here, and that gives you the notification on the side, and then what we call a shout, which is like a message that appears in the middle of the screen. So I'm going to do add notification as a function, the message, and then some values, and the values are essentially what are going to get formatted into that message. So I'll explain a little bit about how that works. So we say self.properties message on user joining, and then we want to pass a value here, which is going to be the name of the person who's joined. So we'll say user equals user get username. Okay, so user is going to be our thing that it needs to be in the message, and user get username is the person that passed this function. So the person who's just logged in, what is their username? We're going to set that to user. So in order for that to appear in the message, we need to make sure we've got the message formatted properly. So if I go to my users in world, and I can see I've got my option here. So we'll say curly brace user curly brace has just joined. Okay, so by putting the word user in those curly braces and having user here, essentially that's going to tell the system, right, well that's what you need to put, that's where you need to put that username. So where I've got get username here, that's going to be essentially a string, it's kind of a text field. That's going to actually put it and replace this user here. So it will say, you know, Russ #82283, whatever it is, has just joined, or the Barbarian has joined. So we'll do the same. So again, it's a really nice way to make kind of notifications and shouts and UI. There's a lot you can do there to kind of really make it dynamic and have some interesting results there. And we'll do the same for exiting. A message on user. Oh no, wait, no. I want the actual message on user leaving. Okay. Let's see. That should hopefully work. Let's have a look. You should make it do something special if someone with the name OMG Boop joins. What would that something special be? Maybe I could like tie in a fireworks package or something and place fireworks all over the map. Okay, so you can see there the notification. Russ2283 has just joined and my name's at the top. So Ed, if you are available, could you join me in the separate preview again? And we should hopefully see a message.
No problem.
Cool. Here we go. It's tense. Oh, it says that I joined again.
Oh.
What? Oh,
Tells
wait.
me that I just joined.
I know why. I know why. I'm just repeating the same variable name. Okay, well, the top still works. Okay, I think I know why. That was a dumb mistake. Okay, you can go back to editor. I'll need you in a minute, but yeah, should hopefully be a fairly quick fix.
Cool, no problems.
OMG Boop says, make it a different color or it kills everyone when I join. That might be a bit extreme. Who knows? Maybe with this package you could adjust it to do that sort of thing. Right, so yeah, the reason that didn't work is because my variable here is called user, but then my variable here is called user. So which one do I change? I want to say, okay, we'll change this to new user and old user. So yeah, want to make sure, when you've got variables, if you call them the same thing, Lua isn't quite smart enough necessarily to know that that's a problem. It will just override one, or it will just have weird side effects like that. So essentially, by having those two variables the same name, it didn't keep them separate. They just became the same thing. So hopefully, new user is what I mean. Okay, so new user. Fine, and the user name is new user, and then for old user we pass old user. Okay, try that again. After this, there's just one more package I've got on my list, which should hopefully be, again, fairly straightforward one, but I think it could produce some pretty interesting results, and that's the kind of player movement in a trigger logic. So it's kind of slowing players down when they're inside a trigger, based on some parameters and stuff. So it could be pretty useful.
Am I jumping in again?
You are, yes. I was just about to say, could you
Cool.
I'm enjoying seeing this this diner just get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like more stuff up here.
But you can make a crazy labyrinthine diner.
A diner maze, diner booth maze.
Ooh. Dinosaur. That was the most obvious pun. Yay, hello.
Hello, I saw you join. That's good.
Cool.
If you want to now return, we should see it saying the message twice.
It's worth saying once, it's worth saying twice.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we definitely want to let everyone know that the Kabarbarian is gone.
Thanks.
With having this on the script on the user. So in theory, this doesn't need to be a script that's on the user, but I want to keep it in one place for now. What I might do is I might package this up because it does work. It's just a little bit of a thing. I might package this up and get it out there, and then I can always come back to fix any little issues. But it's a good one to kind of get out there for players to start using. So pretty straightforward. It's just going to be a simple say one script folder thing. So users in world. Yeah, let's template this up. Users in world, and let's go to our packages. Create a new one. Yeah, a simple UI to show the users in your game. Okay, and we just got the one package there. Cool. Okay, so that's another one that hopefully should be pretty good for you, for people to use. I will write all these up on the package, on the forum, on the package guides section. So again, if you are making packages for people, I'd highly recommend checking out the package guides section of the forum. It's a good place to have a kind of a definitive list of packages that are really useful, and it's a really great place to explain kind of how to use them, maybe some example images. all that sort of stuff. Ed, how are you getting on with Dyna? Is it worth having a little check-in to see
Yeah.
what we've got?
I think what I can mainly sort of say to this is what I've been trying to do is I've built everything that I've done starting with a locator. I always start with a locator, and then rather than Crayta is very good at you're clicking on something in the library and then you click on something else and it makes it a child of that thing, which is very useful at times. But I find that when I'm making something that I want to repeat like this, I create the locator at 000 in the world, and then I drag things from the library onto that onto that locator in the world tree, because that makes sure that the thing is at 000 in relation to that locator, and then everything, and it also makes it a child of it, of course. And then I build around that and just keep adding to that. And that means that when you make something like these, like the tables that we showed you earlier, when you drag a template that's been made in that way onto the table, everything appears in the right place. So that's kind of how I try to work. Then as far as the package is going to be concerned, once I make it, I've tried to name everything in a sensible way so that I've got like Dyna Booth A, B, and C. I've got Dyna Counter A that I've just been doing. I've got Dyna Table Contents, which means drag those contents onto a table within the Dyna, and they should just work. And I'm doing Dyna Counter Contents A at the moment. You drag those onto a Dyna Counter, and they'll just appear in the right place. So just naming conventions and a little bit of rigidity in how you structure your world tree can just make things so much simpler that you can just plug these things together. I mean, you've just been watching us for what, an hour and a half, but you could easily, with the things I've made, build this little Dyna interior in 3 minutes just by having templates like this and packages. A simple package containing templates like this can just help you just make things so quickly.
Yeah, no, yeah. I think that's kind of the beauty of it. You know, you spend the time building it and designing it to then save a lot of time later on. You know, and you can kind of drag and drop. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really pretty cool package.
And then to share, yeah, obviously the whole point of it is sharing stuff. So if you make a package, you don't necessarily use your own packages yourself. You make a package to share with other people.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely.
In a way,
that's good. I mean, I can see us using this sort of stuff as well. You know, in little things that we're doing. So definitely a good exercise, for sure. So Ryosaur says, "Are you able to write tests for the packages created?" So I assume you mean like kind of like a unit test, like a code-based kind of test, and you could write things for the console. So, for example, you could write things, you know, that would do various things. There's limitations, but you know, you could do some sort of problem checking, problem detecting. It might be that, you know, the implementation requires a certain script to exist in the world as part of your package. So if the players have only installed half the package, you could have your scripts look for a certain thing and say in the console, this isn't going to work because this isn't here. So it might not error, but it's actually missing something. So there are some tests and some things you can do to kind of help players install it, to help players, you know, debug issues with it. So there's some options there. You know, there's limited to a degree, but there are, you know, some pretty cool ways that you can kind of assist through unit test type things. Right, final package for tonight. So what we at? We're at 25 past. So hopefully this one won't take too long. But essentially, this was a request that came through on the forum. So again, if you have any more suggestions or any requests on the forum or any requests for packages, then do head over to the forum. If you're on Twitch, that's a !package-request. We'll give you the link. And essentially what you want to do is head over there and just say what it is you'd like, a little bit of context. And if I don't get to it, if we don't get to it, that's somewhere that other creators who are kind of perhaps people who are looking to make packages rather than games, can find your request and get something together for you. Right, what do I need for this? I need some mud. Let's make some mud. Let's get a new voxel mesh. Simply call it mud. Go down. Okay. So this is going to be my mud. Let's go. Pretty sure we've got a nice mud. Yeah. Nice mud voxel already. And we'll make that 20 by 20. Okay, so here's my mud space. One thing you can do with this to make it quite nice is to disable collision on it. Then a player can actually sort of stand, their feet will be buried in the mud. It's quite a nice effect. And what we're looking to do is create a trigger around this, which will actually then change the way the player moves through it. So it will slow them down. It might turn off certain characteristics like jumping and crouching and all that sort of stuff. There's a few options of how we can do this, but for now let's kind of stick to the simple stuff. So we want a trigger. Let's drag that onto mud. Okay, and we'll call this a movement trigger. It's for players only, so by ticking players only, we make sure that only players can trigger this, because we're going to be interacting with things on the character. So you might want to take this logic and adjust it for meshes that move through it. You might want to slow a mesh down. That gets a lot trickier with the way that would work. It depends how you're moving your mesh, but in this case we can kind of guarantee that the player is moving through the normal player controller means. Let's see what we can do here. So let's add a script to this figure. Movement trigger script. Okay, so what can we do first? Well, we want to pick up a couple of things here. So on trigger enter. Okay, so this is called automatically when a entity or when a thing enters this trigger, and that players only checkbox that I ticked before will kind of filter that to only be for players. So we know if that's ticked that it has to be a player that's here. So on trigger enter player, and here's where we can basically start messing with their speeds and their abilities. We'll do the same essentially for an on trigger exit. Okay, so what we're going to set this to, this will be move speed. Say the default will be 0.5, which will be kind of half the default move speed of 1. And our tooltip will be speed in which a player moves through the mud. Okay, so then all we need to do, quite straightforward, is player. So we know this is our player character. Speed multiplier. Okay, so this is an option that comes off the back of characters, which essentially is their speed. So if we set that to our self.properties move speed, okay, and then on exit we're going to set that back to 1. Now what we're going to have to be careful of here is that this is assuming that the player's speed when they came into the trigger was 1, but there might be various things in the game which have altered that. You might have changed it, so we want to make sure that we set the player's speed back to what it was. Now we could have a property, or what we could do and what I might do here is actually track the players who are in the trigger and what their entry speed was, and then essentially make sure we're setting that back when we leave. So I think that's going to be the way to do it, but we'll check this sort of logic works to start with. Let's adjust this in size. So 500 by 500. Okay, so that's my trigger. That's covering my mud patch. And let's see what happens as I run through it. Okay. So I'm fine. I'm walking. So this is my normal kind of 1 time speed. And then we see I get slowed down and then I get returned. So you can see the animation sort of cycle slows down a bit while I'm inside that mud. Speeds up. So that's creating the effect we want. There's going to be a few little bits to just kind of tweak on the back of that. So firstly, I'm going to have a look at making sure we return to the correct speed. Okay. Essentially, what we want to do is we want to have a table. You know, we want to have a collection of all the players who have entered the trigger, and as part of that table, we want to record the speed. So let's set up a new table. So self.players in trigger. Okay, so when a player enters this, we're going to set their move speed, but before we do that, we actually need to capture what their speed is. So set up a new record. So this record will be a player, which is the player entity itself, and speed, which is player.speed multiplier. So we're going to basically save off whatever's stored in that variable. So whatever that is, we're going to save that here before we change it. And we're going to insert into that table from before. We're going to insert our record. Okay, so we've now added an entry to our table, which is the player and their speed. So now when a player exits, what we actually need to do is work out, okay, well, what was their entry speed? So for each record in our table, okay, we want a variable here, so local, we'll just call it speed. Right, we'll call it revert speed, and we'll set that to 1 by default because we need to set something. But what we should do is we should always find the player in here. So on trigger exit player, I want to set their speed to record if record.player is equal to player. So if the record we're currently looking at is our player, then revert speed is record.speed. So this that we've saved up here. Okay, and then regardless, we're always going to want to go back to our revert speed, whether that is the 1 or what it should always be is the player that we found. And then actually what we also want to do is retain that key, because we're going to need to remove this player. So we want to make sure that once they've exited the trigger, we've kind of in our table that's tracking who's in the trigger, we need to make sure we've removed them. So table dot remove from self players in trigger key. So we need to remove it by the key. That's how table remove works. You can't say this is the player, remove the player. We need to remove the key, and the key is basically how it's remembered what's in each position of the table. So a little bit complex, but if you're ever removing, make sure that you're kind of using the key and not the entity itself or the thing that's in the table. Now we've actually found the player we could break. So the break basically forces you out of the loop you're in. So in this case, let's say there's 6 players in the trigger. Rather than searching all 6, it might be that actually we find it on the second loop. So we check the first player, that wasn't the right one. We check the second player, and that was the right one. So actually at that point, there's no point in checking the other 4 because we found the one that we were looking for. So break just gets you out of that loop a little bit early. Let's back to the revert speed. So to test this, I guess what we'd need to do, let's put the speed down even further, so 0.2. Let's boost the player's start speed. Okay, so they're going to start with a speed of 2, so they're going to be running twice as fast, but they're going to slow down by quite a lot to 0.2, and then we should see we go back to 2. So I've not programmed it to be 2 anywhere, but it should remember that it was 2 when we entered. look. Okay, so it's super quick. And oh, okay, right. Yeah, I think I was too quick for the trigger, so it hadn't quite got time to adjust. Okay, and then when I exit, I can speed up again. Yeah, so the nice thing with Crayta again is it already handles the sort of natural slowing down. It doesn't just instantly chop you to 0.2. The player does kind of slow down. So that's something to consider when you're doing this. So I'm super slow, but when I leave, I then slowly speed back up, back to full. Okay, so the last thing really to do with this, that's kind of captured the things that I think Mark wanted, but I think what we need to do is just a couple more options so we can disable certain things. And we, a lot of this stuff we can kind of capture in here as well. So, can jump. So remember, when they enter the trigger, could they jump? Because we don't want to just automatically assume they could. Can crouch. Can crouch. So can they jump? Can they crouch? And can sprint. Sprint. So we're going to capture all of the things. Could they jump, crouch, and sprint when they enter the trigger? And let's have a few more things here. So revert, jump. Let's assume we want to put them all back if we didn't find the player, but again, we should always find a player in this table. Revert, jump, revert, crouch, revert, sprint. Okay, so once we've basically pulled those back out of the table, then what we want to do is just set them all again here. So can jump is revert jump. Can crouch is revert crouch. And player.can sprint is revert sprint. Okay, so no matter what we do, when we enter the trigger, we remember what it was, and then when we exit the trigger, we put it back. But what we want to do now is the last little touch is actually specify through the properties whether to actually change these things. So, so here we want to say can jump the boolean, and the tooltip will be can the player jump while in the trigger. So it might be that, in this trigger, when they're in this, it might not be mud, it might be like a neon glowing patch, it might be some sort of goo, essentially. So I think a player couldn't jump when they enter the trigger, they now can jump, and then when they exit the trigger, they now can't again. So it's not necessarily about restricting the player, but you could use this on the flip side, and actually the trigger area is kind of powering the player. So can jump, can crouch, and sprint. And then finally we need to set them here. So how are you getting on with those, Ed? Do you think you're at a point where we could have a look at packaging?
Yes, I'm pretty close. I'm just working on some contents for a corner section of the counter. But I've got some good bits and bobs sitting there. Yeah, nice. I think I'm pretty happy.
Cool. Okay, well I'm going to give this a quick test.
You doing that as a separate server? Do you want me to
Separate
jump?
server. I mean, you can do if you want to come and muck around in a bit of mud. Okay, so I get into my trigger. Oh, I need to slow the players down really. So if I try and jump, I now can't. If I try and crouch, I can't, and sprint doesn't do anything. Whereas once I've exited the trigger, I can now jump, I can crouch, sprint. Cool.
I have the same, so it's working for me as well as just you.
Nice.
Yeah, working on both of us.
So I can mash,
Nicely done.
mash. Okay, cool. So as soon as I get out of the trigger, I can suddenly jump again.
I can run through it.
Yeah, so I think that's just a problem with being super fast and it being a really small trigger.
Oh, gotcha.
Because once you set the speed, it does slow you down. Like it doesn't instantly slow you down. It's kind of got a bit of a putting the brakes on, but you're too fast essentially. So, but
I'm already out. I'm out by the time I'm in.
Yes,
sort of thing.
But it kind of works quite nice actually for that. It's like it slows the player down but doesn't stop them. So there's definitely use for that there as well.
Yeah, that could be a good gameplay thing. That if you run across this, you'll be okay, but if you stop, you get sucked in.
Yeah, it's kind of like a quicksand thing. It works quite nicely. Is there any reason you don't use F5 to edit mode? So in this case, I'm using this what we call separate preview. So there's the cogs up here where you can basically say preview on a new server, and that doesn't pull everybody into the server. It kind of spins up a second server and allows people to come and go from that one as they leave. There's a few other kind of little technical differences between the proper F5 preview and then this separate preview. But yeah, that's the main one. It's players can choose as and when to join that one. And do you know if we can use an external editor to edit the code? So the answer is no. No, we can't. The reason that we kind of have the code all within Crayta is it's actually the best way for us to really kind of lean on the power of the collaboration and the accessibility that we're going for in Crayta. So we don't really want Crayta to be a thing where kind of the external side, having it in engine actually makes it quite a lot easier, and it allows us to do the things like the collaboration. So multiple people, like a Google Doc, multiple people can work on the code at the same time, which is a really powerful way to build games and to learn, and all sorts of implementations. So I'm not sure. I mean, never say never, but I really don't think anytime soon there's going to be external editor support. You can copy and paste, so you could copy and paste in from an external source. So it might be that you want to work on scripts in something like Studio Visual or Visual Studio Code or Notepad++, or any of those sort of engine things. Right. Cool. So I think, I think that all works. Actually, that works quite nicely. So fairly straightforward. Again, just kind of capturing the player's state when they enter, reverting it when they leave, and then setting some stuff, mucking around with it in the meantime. So I'm going to template up my mud.
All my stuff is templated up, so I'm going to make a package with all my Dyna bits. Their naming should be quite obvious if anybody wants to use them. You use tables with tables, you use counters with counters, and you take it from there. So hopefully it'll be useful for people to start making some sort of Dyna-based environments.
Nice.
And that'd be really good to see. Look forward to seeing what you make with it.
So I just want to try one thing quickly. So I've got my mud. I'm also going to do I'm going to call it goop. I want to try that flip side I was saying, so where it's like you can kind of, when you're in this area, you get the ability to jump. See how well that works. Okay, so I've got my boost pad. This one is going to have not affect the movement speed. I'm going to say you can jump, and I'm going to turn jump off on the player. So we can't jump until we're in this pad. There should be an example of how it's not just a inhibiting thing, but it's actually something that can boost the players as well. Cool. I'm going to do a full preview. I'll pull everybody across. Right, let's see. So I can't jump. I'm going to enter the mud. And I still can't jump when I leave, so that's remembered that I couldn't jump. But when I'm in the pad, hey, I can jump.
Yeah.
And then when I exit, can't jump. Cool. Okay, yeah, so I think there's a definite, there's a definite use case there for sort of both sides of that ability. So let's template. Let's break the link to that. The template this is boost pad. So that's a couple of examples of both ways that you can use this. And then let's get packaging. Call it player movement trigger logic. A trigger that affects that players can move through it. Something simple like that. And then I want to pull in my mud and my boost pad. And that's what's going to come with that is the sort of the voxel mesh, but then the script being kind of the main thing there. Flow mud. Cool. Okay, so we're going to get a couple of voxel meshes and the script. And then the trigger should obviously be part of that as well, so that's all fine. Cool. Let's confirm. And that's there. So player movement trigger logic there. Cool. And there's all sorts of scripts that will probably do again very similar things. Movement scripts. There's kind of player movement capturing, player buffs, all sorts of stuff. So I think the final thing to do then, Ed, is should we package up your stuff?
I've packaged up my stuff. It is called U2G_stream diner.
Awesome. I said UTG. Sweet. So you got U2G combine harvester, which is a pretty cool one. People, but then okay. So bits and bobs for a diner environment created on the live stream. Enjoy. Give us a poke if you want more info on how to use it, and we'll keep adding to it. So yeah, great stuff. So if anyone missed it, essentially the idea is with this package, if I just want to go to my templates, I can drag in a diner booth C. Okay, and then just do any of the contents work, I guess. If I drag,
if you click on the table,
yep.
The table contents work. You can drag anything onto the tables; they will work.
Cool.
So select the table itself and drag it onto there. It should actually work if you do it on the root, actually, because they both have the same.
Yeah, keeps it nice if you want to move the table though. Then at least then, if you drag it to the table. So table contents A. Cool. Okay, so you can very quickly see that you can throw lots of stuff together. So very good stuff, Ed. I'll make a note to get that written up as a package guide at some point as well. So great. All right. Well, thank you very much, Ed. That's been a pretty.
No problem. That was fun.
Yeah, pretty good stuff. As I say, I think what we can do is we can look to do more art stuff like that in the future. So, what's chat saying? Could rebuild the diner from Alan Wake. So there we go. There's a challenge for someone to take this and rebuild the that kind of horror environment with that. So excellent. Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Ed. I guess I'll catch up with you.
No worries.
In a later stream.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining in. As I say, it's been a pretty heavy couple of hours of me just rambling through a lot of stuff. So hopefully there's been some useful things there. As I say, I will get these written up into a package guide at some point. But if you do have any more suggestions or things that you'd like to see us build on this sort of stream, this is the sort of stream that I do during the day on a Monday and a Thursday. So that's 11 till about 1 o'clock BST. So kind of just over the middle of the day. We kind of just take things that players would like, things that I've thought of that would be handy for players, and we kind of throw them together in a package. So yeah, if there's anything, do make sure you head over to the forum, to the package request section, or find out more on our Discord. So you can go to discord.gg/Crayta. All the mods and the devs, and we're all over there kind of chatting most of the time, and a lot of the community are over there. So really active bunch, really great place to just sort of hang out, talk more Crayta, kind of promote your own game, promote your game updates, ask questions, all sorts of stuff. So I highly recommend checking out our Discord if you haven't already. Twitter and Instagram @CraytaGame on both of those platforms, so you can find us for more news and images and keep up to date with all the stuff that's going on in the world of Crayta. And then finally, obviously, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Twitch. So we want to kind of keep building our live presence. These live streams are a pretty handy way for us to kind of engage with the community. So the more subscribers, likes, follows, all that sort of stuff, the more comments we get, the more we can kind of put more energy and effort into this side of things. So AJ and Selena will be back tomorrow at the same time. So there'll be 7 p.m. BST. I think the current plan is they're going to be playing some of the Game Jam submissions that have since been updated. So obviously we've played them last week, but now there's been some updates. It'd be cool to see kind of what sort of stuff players are getting up to, as well as some other games. Just from around the universe of Crayta, there's been a lot going on in the last 7 days. So do make sure you tune in tomorrow to find more. There. Join in, use the share codes, play along. It's generally a pretty good time, good fun stream. But yeah, that's going to bring an end to this one. So thank you everybody for joining in, and I'll see you on Thursday in my stream.